Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry and I'm a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher X video. All right, an interesting video came across the feed and it's called World War I Performance Tier List. And this is by a channel called Spectrum. So I'm in World War I with my history class right now. Especially love looking at videos where I'm in the midst of teaching it because I love to get any little tidbits I can before my lesson's over, before I teach it for the next year. And tier lists are always fun because you can always debate them. So of course I'm going to want to see your tier list. This original video is down below. Make sure you're supporting Spectrum. Give the original video a view, a like, and subscribe to the channel. All right, let's check it out. You know, and I was thinking, just as I was setting this up, if you were to do something like this for World War II versus World War I, do you feel like in World War I, it would be harder to put countries at like S tier than in World War II? I kind of do, right? Maybe because it was such a stalemate for so long in so many places. There's, you know, the criteria might be different, but I don't know. Let's check this out. Let's see what's going on.
World War I. The conflict in which you can gain 500 meters of territory for the small price of 50,000 men.
Yeah.
A conflict with a resolution so unsatisfying, it ensured a Second World War. If there's any sort of meaningful conclusion to take, the following 40 years show us the Treaty of Versailles wasn't harsh enough. Let's make a tier list of the...
Ooh, okay. I've kind of heard this talked about a little bit about the harshness of Versailles, where the common thing seems to be the harshness is what created the fascist Germany, right? So like, you know, harsher, like what could you do to be harsher? And would that in some way prevent the spread of fascism in other parts of the world? Because I mean, look at it. You had like Italy, who becomes a fascist state and an aggressive state and kind of starts a lot of the dominoes in Europe, but was an ally, right? And yes, they were unsatisfied with the Treaty of Versailles because they didn't really get anything out of it. But then you have what happened to Germany, and it couldn't have been much harsher for Germany. Stripped away their military, their economy, all that stuff, and literally gave the provisions to create the fascist, you know, regime there. But then you look at like the end of World War II, which wasn't nearly as harsh on those countries, but what you saw instead was actual aid to build up those countries to prevent extremist movements like in Japan and Germany, and have since, you know, kept those places from having those conditions to create those extremist governments. So I would think the argument should be that being too harsh or harsher would not have helped, you know, would not have helped the situation. But anyway.
Belligerents, shall we? They'll be ranked on how I think they performed, which
militarily or what?
To be completely honest. Also, I'll do this in alphabetical order because I like to be anticlimactic.
Is this gonna be like
Emirate of Azir,
based off
a
of
state so obscure you
Hoi Ford, like I don't know this guy's background or something like that? Is it just a military usage again from somebody that would just play Hoi 4 games, or is there going to be political and economic history, cultural history involved in this? These are some of the thoughts I'm having, you know, going into this. All right, who do you say was first?
I like to be anticlimactic. The Emirate of Azir, a state so obscure you probably didn't even know it existed. Having barely fought the war against the Ottomans, they get the C tier, aka the participation trophy tier. Austria-Hungary. Was there a more dysfunctional state than this one? Not only was the invasion of Serbia in 1914 a disaster, they lost about half their troops in it, were pounded by Russia and needed the Germans to save their asses.
This should be low tier.
Likewise Romania, I mean at first. Even the Italian front was pretty even, as the Germans themselves believed
it was a small front.
They were shackled to a corpse. But
small front, and they had Austria-Hungary had a huge army there. Plus, you had the Germans helping with Russia too, and Russia getting to the war is because of Austria-Hungary pressuring Serbia, who's an ally of theirs. So they got a lot more aid, Austria-Hungary, in limiting fronts.
At least Austria-Hungary did.
Although, I mean, they did have to. I mean, they'd fight in the Balkans and stuff. They get with Serbia and that, but
eventually beat Serbia.
Didn't have to deal with Russia as much.
Romania. Eventually, Austria-Hungary barely escapes F tier.
Brazil. And I put Austria-Hungary, of course, real low at this by being such a instigator of the war as well, and you know, exacerbating this thing and it just like. Accelerating it so much with the assassination and their approach to the response to it. And it doesn't get talked about enough, I think, because, you know, the narrative that came out of Western Europe, of course, put Germany as such an aggressor, and there's good cases for that. But Austria-Hungary kind of gets off the hook a little bit, maybe because their empire collapsed with the end of the war. So it's like there's no one to blame anymore. But I don't know. We go back to what Habsburgs trying to hold on to any sense of relevancy they had anymore.
Eventually. Austria-Hungary barely escapes F tier. Brazil,
that's fair.
The country which joined the war for the sole purpose of distracting the populace from government corruption. Never change, Brazil. It's not like the Brazilians did anything noteworthy. Another participation trophy tier. Belgium,
no, sorry. You don't just get something for participating, okay? If you're going in, you're actually making impact. Let's go lower. Okay, who's this?
Anything noteworthy. Another participation trophy tier. Belgium, the Roger Rabbit of World War I. In face of the German threat, they fought valiantly.
Yeah,
I mean, they were still obliterated, but
sure.
they had spirit. And their country wasn't fully occupied, meaning they fought this war to the bitter end.
Well, to remember, that wasn't the purpose for Germany to take over Belgium. And it was to get around the German-French border to get into northern France to get to Paris. So it was never really the objective. If the Germans really wanted to, yeah, they probably could have. But yes, the Belgians fought very well.
I said, maybe too harsh, but B tier.
Fair. I think that's the high end. But under the circumstances, I'm down with that.
Bulgaria,
I'm good with that.
You know what? They did pretty well. Their entry in the war contributed greatly for the fall of Serbia, screwed over Romania, and helped the Central Powers actually have territorial continuity. It all eventually fell apart, of course, as that happened with all of the Central Powers, but gotta give it to
for a Central Power, yeah.
They did pretty good.
Yeah.
It's even more impressive when you consider the fact that at the start of the war, Bulgaria was still recovering from the disastrous Second Balkan War.
Right.
They just did way better than what they reasonably should have. A tier.
Okay. Yeah. I agree. I think of the under the circumstances, toe to toe, when you look at the Central Powers, yeah, Bulgaria being up there, I'm down with it. I'm down.
China, the OG China, the Republic of China.
Okay, so for them, you know, there's still a lot of context. Remember that this is the new Republic, which was not doing very well. Okay, not doing very well. It was basically run by these warlords. They just converted out of their dynastic cycle, which lasted thousands of years. But yeah, so it was kind of hard for them to get going. Now, understand too, China, the 1800s were brutal for China. They were completely exploited for that whole century by foreign powers. A lot of that because of the lack of industrialization and technological development of their modernization of their military, which saw them lose to, you know, the British and the Opium Wars, and then you're going to get the Sino-Japanese War, where the Japanese are going to come in. The repeated losses in the Boxer Rebellion. You got the Taiping Rebellion. Pretty rough time there, but yeah, didn't do really great in it. But World War II is where things are going to have to, you know, be different.
So really, nothing at all. And you know what that means. Off note, did you know China was the only country not to sign the Treaty of Versailles? The treaty for this was due to having received no territorial concessions. Even the previously mentioned Shandong Peninsula was given to Japan, which, to be fair, they were the ones who occupied it during the war. Right. And the Chinese government just took it, which led to protests erupting back home. Yeah. So in order to save face to their people, they refused to sign the treaty. France.
Yeah, remember that's why Japan joined the war, was to, you know, they were still doing their imperialism process, right? Meiji Restoration happened a couple of decades before. They annexed Korea. They fought the Russians right before this war, and were looking for more territory. And one of the places they were looking for were also German possessions in the Pacific, which also happened in China as well as in the Pacific. So,
reputation the French have for
who? France?
They refused to sign the treaty. France. The reputation the French have for being cheese-eating surrender monkeys is definitely unfair. And if there's a war which earned them this reputation,
France did
it's World War II, not World War I. In World War I would say they were actually one of the better sides.
Oh, for sure.
That being said, Le Panton Rouge, c'est la France. A tier. Germany.
Yeah, good. Yeah, France, I mean, holy crap. Get blindsided, right, with this invasion. Belgium falls quickly, heading right in there, and never let up. Even at the peril of so many lives, they always were able to defend Paris. And if Paris falls, you know, the whole thing falls. Saw that happen in World War II. Of course, they got their aid from the British and stuff, but the French were pretty incredible with that. So yeah, I agree with his upper tier on that.
That being said, Le Panton Rouge, c'est la France. A tier. Germany. Truly a class of their own. The reason why the Central Powers lasted as long as they did was Germany. Bulgaria kind of did okay, but really, it was Germany. Someone
Germany carried
needs to check the Germans' backs because
exactly.
They carried their team.
You gotta say.
Took out the Russians. I mean, kind of. It was more like the Russians took themselves out, but you get the point.
I mean, Germany, you gotta give the credit. I mean, that that front line in the east was pushed in so far again by the Germans. The Austrians were having to deal with, the Balkans. And remember, the Germans are fighting a two-front war here. So militarily, it's impressive. And I think that's where he's going to be doing this. They had to fight a coalition of world powers.
And gave both the Brits and the French a pretty solid run for their money. Incredible they actually had a realistic chance of winning the war. Only nation to be in the S tier.
Yeah.
Greece.
Yeah, S tier. The only reason I wouldn't put it S tier is because of how much or how much they escalated the war. Right? They had a pretty good opportunity to de-escalate this war from the start. By doing the whole blank check thing and then throwing out war declarations like they're in the club dropping money. Like, that was bad. So you have to put a lot of that. I can't just put the military stuff. I got to put the whole context of it. That's why I wouldn't put an S tier, more like A tier.
I mean,
all right, here we go. Greece.
Winning the war. Only nation to be in the S tier. Greece. I mean, they did okay. It took them a while to decide which side they joined. In fact, they nearly had a civil war over it.
Yeah,
but once they did contribute to their allies.
Greece was a mess.
Mostly by opening up another front, which mostly didn't change until nearly the end. All in all,
mid
B tier.
Yeah,
the Kingdom
fine.
of Hejaz, a country which apparently wasn't that into participating in World War I. But they discovered the Ottomans were plotting to remove the king from power. Allegedly. Any expert on this can tell me if this was some British scheme or not, because to me, it definitely smells like it.
Anyway. Maybe, especially when you look at what happens after. Okay, you get Lawrence of Arabia coming in. The British are going to come in, and we're just working with this to be able to take out the Ottoman Empire, right? The Arab community here was hoping to get their independence from the Ottoman Empire, and they actually did quite well. Did very well. So I'm interested to see what happens
under
here.
Certain conditions
they were a huge pain to the Ottomans.
Fulfill, which they only implied would do. Number one rookie mistake.
By the way, check out, if you're interested in this, even if you're not interested, check out the Lawrence of Arabia video I covered. I got to do some voice lines on for things I care about. Just did that about last week. So check that out. It's great.
The Brits and contributed towards expelling the Ottomans out of the Arab Peninsula. After the war was over, surprise, surprise, the Brits only half-assedly did some measures in favor of the Hijazi kingdom, largely keeping their promises unfulfilled. Shocking. As for their contributions for the war, I'd say B tier.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, big nuisance, for the Ottoman Empire. For the overall impact of the war, okay, whatever. That was a big thing. The Ottoman Empire always had to do with these civil issues while they're out there trying to fight. The Ottoman Empire still had to do that. I mean, they beat the British in Gallipoli and stuff like that. So I guess we get into the Ottoman Empire. But yeah, I think that's good. It was under the circumstances for a ragtag type of group going against the Ottomans, going around B tier, fair.
Italy. Mighty Italia was amazing in World War I. Truly the team carriers of the Entente as soon as they joined the war. They did wonderfully. Just didn't have enough battles of the Isonzo. Clear as day S tier.
Wow. We're going S tier with the Italians? Can you give them S tier if they really were never able to force their way into getting the concessions that they were hoping to get for the war? Like, just to make it a no-brainer, no, we're going to get that territory around the Adriatic. And instead, no, you get Yugoslavia and all these other things that happen out there. No way. No way. Not S tier.
Okay, now seriously.
Oh.
Yeah, Japan.
Okay. That was my first major disagreement. Okay, F though, not F tier. No. Not F tier. That's harsh. Mid tier.
Okay, now seriously. Yeah.
Mid at most, I guess. Mid at
Japan.
most.
They did okay with what little they could do, basically taking over all of Germany's stuff in the Pacific and helping the UK with some errands here and there. B tier.
No, I mean, well, okay. It just wasn't as big of a deal for the Japanese. They were just taking little small places that Germany had no way of defending anyway. So it's hard to even grade the Japanese really in World War One, because what major impact did they actually have? Wait, where do you put them?
Pacific and helping the UK with some errands here and there.
It's
B tier.
C. I go C.
Montenegro. Well, there isn't much to say about them. They were barely involved in the war until the remnants of the defeated Serbian army retreated through it to get to Italy. The Austrians then used the opportunity to knock Montenegro out of the war, launching a campaign which accomplished just that in 12 days.
Lower tier.
To be fair to Montenegro, seriously, what could they realistically do?
Sure.
Gotta say, D tier.
Yeah.
The Emirate
Fair.
of Ney and Haza. I am probably mispronouncing this. That's basically the Saudis before they conquered the rest of Arabia. Not much to say except participation trophy.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad they're below Hijaz though. That is for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I feel like they just kind of like took advantage of the situation without really helping the situation like Hijaz did. So I am glad they're below them though.
The Ottoman Empire.
All right.
Imagine
This
being
is
so
complicated.
bad you fail at every single front,
Yeah.
with one notable exception,
Gallipoli.
that it makes you want to commit atrocities you deny to this day. So not only
Armenian
are you a poor
yeah.
participant, you're a sore loser.
Put them
as well.
way down below.
Easy F tier.
Yeah, let's do that. Armenian genocide, you deserve to be down there. You couldn't even defeat the people like the nomads, you know, they couldn't even defeat like the nomadic peoples of the Arabian Peninsula. They were already falling apart. They were late to so much of the modernization. They had one positive big thing out of it. I mean, Gallipoli was a very, very helpful thing, no doubt. Okay, being able to hold on to Gallipoli, that's a huge thing because that would have bursted through the connection between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. British and the Allies could have worked with Russia a little bit more and move around troops. That's the one thing that they kind of added to the situation. But yeah, F tier, and mostly because let's just look at the big picture. The Ottoman Empire was falling. Your empire was at F tier by this time, anyways.
Portugal. They got into the war because Britain told them to do so.
Yep.
And like the little British puppets they were, they obliged.
This is like you can't even grade
slightly
them.
ironic event to occur, considering the Portuguese Republic, installed 4 years before, was based on a sentiment firmly against the British control over the Portuguese monarchy. See the anthem? Against the cannons, March, March. That was meant against the British. Didn't do much during the war. Mostly engaged in minor operations in both the Western Front and
Still
Africa.
dealing with their
The most notable
remnants
event
of their
for Portugal
empire.
was the Battle of Lally, where the Portuguese got absolutely destroyed by the German forces. It may be
Low
my
tier.
home country, but
Those
it really
Portuguese.
didn't do well in this war, so D tier.
All right.
Romania. Initially neutral and not really clear which side they were to join, with the
It
king
was
actually
complicated.
supporting joining the Central Powers.
It was
Though-
weird. It was so weird for the Balkans in general. Like, just the whole. I mean, remember, we had Balkan wars. They're just getting their independence from the Ottoman Empire. They're doing their own thing. They all hate each other because it's the Balkans. So much going on. Then all of a sudden plunged into this thing
The country's elites
because of assassination.
were
Anyway.
in favor of joining the Entente. After receiving an ultimatum, which in reality wasn't an ultimatum at all, they joined the war on the side of the Entente after the Russians had launched a reasonably successive offensive. And then they got blasted. In fact, Romania got blasted so
Yeah,
hard,
they-
they were defeated and had to concede
Incredible
some of their
death
land.
rates.
Then they had the audacity to redeclare war one day before it ended. No doubt in my mind, the worst
Nobody
performer
told
in the
them.
war. Even worse than the Ottomans. F tier, without any doubt. But
Okay.
redeclaring the war just before the end was a Chad move.
I was gonna say originally I was gonna be like D tier, but that end I could get it. F might be a little harsh, but yeah.
I'll have to admit. Russia. It was the
Oh,
case
gosh.
of the big baddie revealed to be
Wah,
kind of a
wah.
A gigantic army found to be grossly underarmed and undersupplied. The Battle of Tannenberg early on marked the actual state of the Russian army behind the facade of the large numbers. But it's not like the
Lost so
Russian
hard
entry
they
in World
turned
War I
communist.
was a complete disaster. The Russians were successful in both the Ottoman and Austrian fronts. It's just their supply problems proved to be seriously crippling. Just look at the Brusilov offensive. It was initially successful but had to be stopped due to supply issues. Eventually, it all collapsed, including their monarchy, and after some very
lose so hard
discussions,
you go
can
communist.
thank Trotsky for that. The war finally ended for Russia with the loss of a lot of territory. Still, not the total disaster of some other countries. D tier.
Dang, I thought it would be like assuredly a D tier. If Romania's going there and Russia literally had to pull out the war because they had 2 revolutions, they had the biggest army in Europe. The biggest army in Europe, mobilized even faster than everyone thought, which was the whole idea of the Schlieffen Plan. You know, I think they completely botched it with that. If anyone was going to be an F tier, I thought it'd be Russia. So, I mean, putting them in D tier above some of those other, I mean, it ended with the Ottoman Empire ended. Like, they were dealing with their own issues. I think you have to put them in the same kind of idea as like Ottoman Empire, because they, you know, also didn't deal with that. So I think they should be in the same as Ottoman Empire.
Above the others, though, Serbia. Given they were surrounded by enemies, their uniform and equipment were ill prepared for the war, and that they continuously repelled Austrian attempts at conquering them, they did pretty great.
Yeah, Serbia should be upper tier.
They still collapsed eventually, but being surrounded on all sides, that was kind of predictable.
They packed a
solid
punch.
A tier.
Okay, yeah, good. So A tier for them. Put that. Serbia, being the small country they did, put up a heck of a fight when you look at those. Yeah, I'm down with it. Okay.
But being surrounded on all sides, that was kind of predictable. Solid A tier. The Kingdom of Siam. Participation trophy. United Kingdom. The UK. The Brits. Also, for the sake of clarity, I am putting the British Empire also in this entry, including Australia, Canada, India, yada yada yada. Why? Mostly laziness, to be completely honest. The UK and its empire had to wear a lot of hats for this war. Right. They had to fight on 3 different continents after all. Wait, is Papua New Guinea in Asia or Oceania? Oceania. 4 different continents. And barring a few disasters here and there, some, Gallipoli, they mostly did well. They helped the French hold back the Germans in the Western Front, pretty much won in Africa, and won most of their fronts against the Ottomans.
And remember, the strength of the British Empire was their navy. When you compared their army to the, like, you know, size wise, minuscule compared to these other countries that had, you know, Germany had 4.5 million, and Austria-Hungary had, you know, they didn't fight them really, but they had 3 million. So we look at the comparison there. So much had to be naval, but then when actually fighting on the ground, yeah, so it's just a different situation, and again, far more global there. They also screwed over a lot of people, like we're saying, like in the Arabian Peninsula, doing that, like just doing them dirty from that. And then the whole just splitting up of the Ottoman Empire in general, creating the mandates, that was very problematic. So
it was pretty
I could go a lot of ways with the British,
in the world which legitimately had a global projection, and it showed. All in all, A tier.
But A tier? I was thinking A or B. Maybe B. I mean, look what we got. So we had Belgium, we had the other. So, like, given the situation, strongest economy, one of the strongest economies. I'm kind of somewhere in there, like A minus, B plus. I feel more like a B plus.
The United States.
Yeah. I think they should be below France, though.
And this is a country where we end things. Considering the average watcher of this video is probably American, what I'll say is, if you think this is a war where you really showed you were a cut above the rest, you are sorely disappointed. Don't get me wrong.
Whatever. Back-to-back World War champs.
American introduction to the war was very important on the Western Front. They just churned 2 million troops into the war like it's no biggie.
True.
But the generals in
now, those were drafted soldiers. American standing army was tiny. It was like 250,000. They had to draft that. They sent what they could immediately, a couple 100,000 just immediately, and then had to draft. And that was pretty amazing. Actually, how quickly they raised an army and got provisions and materials and all the stuff you need for war. That was probably the most impressive thing, actually, I think, about the American introduction to the war was how quick they were able to get ready.
It's just the same old World War I tactic of run into the trenches and try not to die to the machine guns and barbed wire. With predictable results, may I add. If you really want to see a war in which the United States came to chew bubblegum and kick ass and never run out of bubblegum because Americans never stop producing, wait until World War II. Till then, B tier.
Fair, fair, fair. Now, it was a big help. I mean, it definitely was a big help there. Remember, the Americans were also, selling stuff to the Allies, right? It's what brought the U.S. largely into the war by not economically staying out of the war and having merchant ships sunk, by British U-boats and stuff like that. So, U.S. B tier, fair, fair. Now, if they had fought longer, higher. But remember, it was like less than a year, pretty much, for the most part.
And that's it.
Okay.
Shout out to all the Vermaboos who ever so kindly paid.
Heck yeah, patrons. Thanks to my patrons too. I'm sorry I don't give you guys enough attention. Thank you so much here publicly. All right, final thoughts. All right, so in recapping here, I didn't agree necessarily with all of them exacting their tiers, but I feel like I didn't have to move probably more than one full tier for anybody there. I was within about a tier, I feel like, of the original creator there. So I don't know what you guys think. I'd love to see what you guys got. Again, I didn't put anybody really like in S tier. So, maybe that's just not fair, which if you limit it S tier, does that mean A is then the S tier? Yeah, I don't know. But what do you guys think? Who would you put? I'd love to see your tier list. Put them down below. All right, we'll see y'all next time.